Hi, everybody. I'm Tony, and this is,
Dina, hello.
and we're going to answer your questions about Kabbalah. I want to, first of all, welcome all of the students who have been in the course, and this is the opportunity to ask your questions live. Any question about the course, any question in general about Kabbalah. But it's not just the students. We're also broadcasting on YouTube and on Facebook. So make yourselves presentable. You know, put on a shirt, get out of bed. Don't be doing something you don't want people to see. Um, and I want to welcome all of the EU English-speaking students. First time that we've been able to arrange the timing of this Q&A event so that we could include our English-speaking friends from all around the world, so welcome. And I want to let people on YouTube and Facebook know that you're welcome to ask questions too. Of course, we're going to give priority to the students who have been in the course, but we're looking at the chat, the online chats, and we'll answer any questions that we can possibly get to during the event as a whole. So for those people who don't know anything about Kabbalah, and you're tuning into this in order to see, well, what the heck is this? Let's just look at a way of understanding what it is. And by the way, for the students as well, there's something in this approach to understanding Kabbalah that is really about your next step. So the general definition of Kabbalah, we take it for the modern age from Yehuda Ashlag, from The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. This is what he said about it. He said, "The wisdom is no more and no less than a sequence of roots and branches that hang down by way of cause and consequence by a fixed, determined rules, interweaving to a single exalted goal, described as the revelation of the Creator to his creatures in this world." In other words, Kabbalah is a method by which a person can attain the Creator while living in this world. In other words, it's about a shift in a person's perception of reality. What does that mean? How can reality shift? It means that there is something that we don't sense. We don't feel the holistic, totally integrated quality of life, of the system that we live in. We're divided into a kind of perception of self and other, or me and a lot of other parts, complex system, and we take that as our reality. We are separated, that if things work together, we have no sense of what it is that makes them work together, on what principle do they work together. We look at the present, we look at the future. We don't see how this could ever be, how is it now, and how it could ever be. And the way that this change in perception of reality happens for us in the study of Kabbalah is through an alteration that happens in us. And the method itself could best be described as love your neighbor as yourself. You've heard that 1,000 times everywhere from every religion, and when you were growing up, you heard it in kindergarten, you heard love your neighbor, love your friend as yourself. It seems petty and silly and not even addressing the issue. But it is a formula, actually, that describes the method of Kabbalah. So in general, first of all, the reason we think that that's petty and silly as we grow up is that everyone says it, but nobody does it because they don't know how to do it. And the places that we've been that have said that they're all about that don't teach us how to do it. They just say, well, you figure it out and you do it and you be a nice person. That isn't what it means. It really is a very deep, profound thing that Kabbalah actualizes through its methodology. And the methodology of changing perception of reality is all about that phrase. So I'll just break it down a bit. You know, there are assumptions about what the phrase means. So first of all, what is a self? What describes that thing, that self that is supposed to be related to the neighbor in some equality that's called love? How does this thing called love, certainly not the love that we understand, how does that thing eradicate the difference between the self and the neighbor, so that the concerns for the neighbor are exactly the same as my concerns? And what has that got to do with perception of reality? Well, Kabbalah tells us, and when you work with the method, you will see on yourself that this distance between what we think of as ourself, the concerns that we have for ourselves, our intention about directing everything in our life towards ourselves and for our own well-being, as opposed to being able to incorporate the other as the self, in other words, having the same intention towards the other, achieving an intention like that, is the cohesive, coherent force in nature. It gives us access to the holistic system. It lets us perceive something that in general we can't perceive at all. We have no grasp at all on the core intention that drives our perception of reality. This instruction, which is a kind of a mechanism, it's a methodology, when achieved, and to the degree that it's achieved, it enters our perception. It changes our perception. We begin to see the workings, because our own heart, our own intention, the way we think, what fills us is precisely that same force and law that creates and guides all of life. And this love your neighbor as yourself, if taken on its true level, through the method of how one can actually come to do this, and that's the thing that Kabbalah teaches. It shows us how we can actually achieve this lack of difference in concern between us and the other, and how that changes reality totally and gives us access to the Creator. What is the Creator? The Creator is the impelling force behind all of life. And it's part of us too. But this is the only way to enter it, because we don't enter it as individuals. We enter it as a collective known as love your neighbor as yourself, and a collective awareness. So just to elaborate a little bit on that, and to give you something to think about and maybe to form your questions, let's take a look at the first clip, and when we come back, we'll start answering your questions. There's a science that deals only with the most essential purpose, covering the greatest possible scope, and specifically how we come to know and live in it. It gives us a practical, very human way of studying the highest natural forces, their place in us and our place in them. It's the essential science of meaning and everything that results from it. And in it, rather than beginning by examining physical matter, it starts with a view of life in this world as seen from the perspective of those forces that build and evolve it, and then describes how to reveal our conscious sensation of its purpose in us. So we're going to use its insights to peek into that gap. The science is called Kabbalah, which is a Hebrew word that means reception, how to receive and perceive. Its findings make it clear that what you think of as meaning and inexplicably long for is in fact the desire to relate to the highest, most comprehensive dimension of life. That your longing and doubt are required to make you capable of grasping the purpose and meaning, because they're the container in which you'll eventually receive it. Not only that, it describes exactly what the purpose of life is from the point of view of that dimension, and how this larger goal becomes activated only if and when you consciously engage with it, and not with something else that you imagine. And because its purpose is constantly aimed at your development, it's as if it's waiting for you to reveal it. And somewhere, even if ever so faintly, you feel that. There is a single cause, an impetus underlying, unfolding everything that ever happens. It's a natural mechanism, a law. But the only form in which the human heart is able to perceive and relate with it is as an intention called the thought of creation. And that is to create a creature and to bring it to complete fulfillment. That is both a description of the highest force and dimension of nature and the ultimate purpose of all life. What does that thought have to do with the meaning of your life? You could take the creature part of that equation personally, and it would only be partly true, because the creature in the thought of creation is our entire reality, the cosmos. Every object in it, all its cascading, lesser, non-physical forces and dimensions, everything and anything outside of that intention is the creature. And nothing that has ever happened, is happening, or ever will happen can happen for any other reason or to serve any other purpose. So no matter how events may feel to us, we're always held, nurtured, and evolved by the action of an unwavering force of giving. A constant, unperceived positive influence that's the very essence of meaning. So in the first place, you're already in all of this, and all of this is already in you. The thing that's concealing the profound interrelation, that's preventing us from feeling our true identity, is the exact quality that makes us the creature. So let's go to your questions. And our preferred mode of questions from the students is with your camera live and with your microphone, so that we can really get a sense of each other here, make a little connection.
Okay, let's start. Our first question, we actually have live question now. Okay. It's Baal HaShechina. That's the name on
Nice.
Zoom. Yeah.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Hello, my name is Cameron. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, how you doing, Mr. Kozinek? So basically my question was, I remember seeing some information from, I believe it was, I don't know if it was Yehuda Ashlag or if it was Michael Laitman, but it was about the 125 spiritual degrees that separate us, that separate each other, and how to attain these 125 spiritual degrees to basically correct the soul and gain greater equivalence of form to the Creator. Basically, like after you gain the 100, from my understanding, it's after you attained the 125th spiritual degree, you have corrected your soul. And I want to know, I haven't really gotten too much information about exactly if there even is a specific detail to each degree on the spiritual ladder. And I just wanted to know, is there a specific instruction on how to gain each degree on that spiritual ladder? And is there any information on each specific degree?
The process of attainment goes like this. We begin to work. We begin to work not for ourselves, and we do it with in a system, in a simulator, so to speak, of spirituality, which is called a group. That is, that we do it with other students. And the reason for this is because an individual cannot climb these degrees. The degrees are degrees of inclusivity. They mean how much is one's sensation of life restricted only to the self-attaining spirituality compared to these people that I'm working with, the benefit of them and the spiritual quality appearing between people. Because the spiritual quality does not and cannot ever exist in a separated part. It can only exist between parts. Because the connecting force is the vivifying force. That's life. Life and the Creator exists between the parts. And it works for the benefit of all the parts. So the first thing that happens is that a person attains they enter the spiritual perception. Before that, they're in preparation, and there's many, many things that happen for a person in preparation because we have lots and lots of assumptions that we kind of have to unassume. We have to begin to feel above and outside the ego. And that doesn't mean some abstracted other place. That means for the benefit of others and feeling their needs, their perceptions as a single thing that is the sort of the upper light working on this collective of people, which actually aren't. They're actually the creature. The creature is only really alive. The spiritual creature or the soul only begins its life through the connection with others and through the force that passes between them. Then, so that first degree is that. Every other degree in correction, that is, in the transformation of our perception of reality into identification with the force that creates everything, with the Creator, happens by a deeper and deeper identification with people. Because we think that we have a spiritual feeling, a spiritual desire, but we have a tiny, 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 tiny one. Just enough to sustain us and to the point where we get to some place where we can begin working with the real one, with the spiritual force of other people. And it's that expansion. The next spiritual state is a higher degree of perception, feeling, and identification with the other, with the neighbor as itself. It's not like, well, it's as much as I care about myself. No, the others are your soul. What's outside of us, as far as people goes, that's the soul. There's no soul in us. So, are there precise descriptions? No, there aren't. Do people have similar experiences as they reach these different grades? Yes, they do. And they're described in the books of Kabbalah. But Kabbalah is not intellectual, even though it is a science. The science is about transforming the heart of the person. Because the heart is actually where higher perception exists. And it's not in us. Our heart is actually outside of us, just as the soul is. So the language of books like the Zohar and other books that are written from those higher spiritual degrees describe exactly what those 125 sensations, let's say, or words are modes of connection. But they can't be described to a person beforehand because they have to be attained. We rise to that. There's no way that we can, within our reason, do something, because all of that happens within the quality that we're trying to escape. The quality of egoism is the one that sees the degrees in that manner that you could read and you could do an action and you could sort of do a ritual or whatever and you're on the next level. That doesn't exist in spirituality. That's in the quality that we're trying to rise above.
Oh, nice. Next question from someone calling himself Infinite Universe. Is this only pure theoretical Kabbalah? And if so, could you recommend good practical Kabbalah literature and resources?
When you post the questions, friends, who are working in production, if you can, say where it came from. Did it come from from YouTube or from a public broadcaster, or did it come from our students? This is not theoretical Kabbalah. What Kabbalah teaches is the actual methodology of Lurianic Kabbalah. This is directly from the Zohar, and the method has been passed down by the teachers of Kabbalah in a direct line to all the way down to the teacher and leader of B'nai Baruch, which is the educational organization that is KABU. It is only practical. Now, of course, we read and we learn sources, but they're all exact spiritual sources. They are not the sort of sources that you're going to find on the internet or that people make up and publish. And it could be a bestseller, but it has nothing to do with Kabbalah. The whole process of learning in KABU is to take a person from the theoretical, like undoing the kind of theoretical approach, to a place where they are ready to begin working in practical Kabbalah and to changes in perception of reality, changes that happen inside of them. I don't know that you're going to find that anyplace else. I know I searched for almost 30 years before I found my teacher here in the B'nai Baruch educational organization, and I followed many paths. There's no place where there is living Kabbalah, in my experience, other than here.
John is asking, I understood Kabbalah means in Hebrew reception. Why it is called the wisdom of reception? Doesn't it teach to do the opposite?
Well, there is a force that gives, this force of bestowal that we call the Creator. It always and only gives. It never changes. Its attitude is always exactly the same. And it provides all life and fulfills all life. So we are created in the exact opposite phase of this force. We are the force of reception. That's what creation is. No matter how we want to break it down in our perception, rocks, plants, animals, galaxies. It doesn't matter how you break it down, because it really isn't broken down. It really is only a single other opposite side of the same force. So we can't undo what we are as the way that we've been created. That's what we are. We are reception. The method of Kabbalah is a way of transforming reception into bestowal, so that it becomes like bestowal. That somehow this force, without obliterating the force, without destroying the ego, without destroying the force of reception, nonetheless is capable of transforming an aspect in itself in order to become like bestowal. So that means how to receive correctly. What is the correct mode of working with ego? Do we kill it? No. We expand it and we transform it as it's expanded. And that also, by the way, constitutes the 125 steps. It's not that we become less and less and less and less egoistic. It's that our ego becomes coarser, stronger, and then that becomes transformed again into a form of bestowal. So it's not like we are detaching from it, but we're changing the quality of life itself, and not just for us, for all of life. And if we cut this off and we say, no more reception, no more ego, only good, well, we know where that goes. It goes nowhere. It goes to war, it goes to destruction, it goes to all kinds of other things that come from illusion. This is working with the real mechanisms of nature and how to guide these mechanisms of nature to a good end, to the intended outcome for life that was in the original thought behind creation.
We got a couple of live questions.
Great.
Let's go to Hayden.
Video.
We hear you, Hayden.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were okay, never mind. So my question is, so my understanding is that those who don't know Kabbalah, okay. those who are struggling, that don't know Kabbalah in the way of changing one's own beliefs in their difficult life situations, how can we help them if if they don't know Kabbalah, and if it's not like we can't really push them, okay, so like Kabbalah is this, that. um I know we can influence them because of our own understanding and our own inclusivity, but like you said, you um we can only know or these steps if we attain them. So like how can we deal with people or help people who are struggling with life because they don't see any other options, or like for example, they're in a position of divorce or relationship problems, family problems, things like that. um I hope I got my question thorough.
I I understand your question. Um, the healing of situations around us, and not just the intimate ones, not just in our family, or not just our friends, but our broader circles, our society, and the people that you're concerned about. That happens as a byproduct of a correct action. No action that we take, other than the one that the law of nature wants us to take, is going to bring, say, healing and insight to other people who aren't consciously involved. But if our action is to learn and to change ourselves and begin working with others in that action as a spiritual action, then everything around us becomes ordered. Now, you got to understand that it doesn't mean that it goes in a straight line towards what we consider, what we think is good. The mechanism of nature is always working with stuff that we call good and bad, but it's all aimed at good. In other words, a person won't come to learn about Kabbalah unless there's a real need. They have to recognize there's a specific thing missing for them. And also, people who come to study also have intuited and confirmed in themselves that they realize they've got to change something in them, that there's something that they're kind of responsible. It's a good thing. I mean, it doesn't mean I feel good at first, but it's a good thing. And likewise, the kinds of external forces that happen on people around us, people who are going through things, are happening for a good reason, so that they will say, I'm suffering, and say, well, but why am I suffering? How did I get into this? What is the core problem here? Is it that I picked the wrong person, so now I got to get divorced? Those are symptoms, and all the things that we see happening in the world they're really troubling to us. It looks like we're going to hell in a handbasket. We're not, actually. These forces are working on waking up everybody. Now, as far as our work, what we're seeing in the world is happening because there's no Rosh in the world. There's no head. We're one body, but the head of the body is not awake. The head of the soul is not awake. That's what you're here to work on. And that head is made up of love your neighbor as yourself, as a reality in which the upper force actually lives between people. That's what you would call a temple. That's what you would call a live soul. And that becomes the mind of humanity. That loving force enters humanity because you did it. You worked at it. You overcame your expanded ego, the distance that you feel between people, your justification for being a loner, like we all are, and you found another force between people. That is the top. That's like the brain, or the top of the pyramid, and it trickles down to everybody. And those closest to it, all of a sudden they become awake. It's like the 100th monkey syndrome. That's how we do it. Don't waste your energy trying to do something like that now. Don't try to convince people about it, because they won't be able to hear you until they have that specific need and they will. They're developing it. Work on altering your own qualities, and that will help them more than anything else that we could do. We have 186 connections right now. That's pretty good for a
Great.
Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Another live questions from Ricardo.
Hello?
We hear
Am
you,
I-
Ricardo. Go ahead.
Oh, hello, Johnny. My question is related to the development of correction. As you said, Tony, we need to connect to other people in a community or any kind of community. I'm studying in CabU, that is a virtual environment. How is it expected to grow in this kind of environment in which you cannot feel directly the person you are related?
In general, you can't smell them, but you can feel them. I mean, it's possible to reach a kind of connection to people beyond the time and distance. But it's a correct concern that you have. There are things that as you go along in the course, and I'm not exactly sure where you're at in the course, but as you go along to different semesters, you're going to see that we provide the ability, like an enhanced connection resource, in which people will be meeting in a more intensive way, also virtually, and working directly on the methodology, like hands-on, the practical implementation of it. So there'll be a deepening of that. But aside from that, we're also in the near future, in the fall, in October, we are planning and we're having a retreat for KabU students. And it's like, this is going to be fantastic. I'm really excited about this. This is a I'll tell you a little bit about this later. So stay tuned. The courses themselves start with what you're doing now, and they expand into, like I said, into a greater connection between people, and responsibility, as far as you want to take it, with other people, and chances to study the more technical work. That is, you learn pticha, that is the science of Kabbalah, the worlds, the different degrees, the language of the emotional language that describes these states in us that are spiritual and emotional states of connection. You'll learn about that. And in general, for people who, so that's how you will deepen that. And then you'll also have an opportunity to actually meet physically with people, because we provide events like this. Like I said, I'll tell you about this event later. But for people who don't know about our courses and what our friends here on the screen are already experiencing, you can go. If you could, please put a link in the chats for people, so you can take a look at what's available there. There's a course that starts.
Is it this one? September 30th?
Yeah, that's it. It starts September
30th.
30th.
Yeah.
And there's Kabbalah Revealed 1, Kabbalah Revealed 2, in which you will get the basic concepts and also have an opportunity in getting these concepts to unlearn a lot of assumptions that we have about spirituality that are actually blocking us from perceiving anything about it. So you go through that, and then there are other semesters. Basically these courses are they're really at no cost. I mean, there's no cost there's no price that you have to pay in order to get in. And it's very important for us to be able to maintain these courses, so we ask people to pay what they wish in order to take them. So, what it's worth to you to learn about spirituality, to find your soul, and to fulfill the purpose of your existence, that's what it's worth. It costs us about $25 per semester per person to be able to provide all of the resources that we do. Some people, it's no problem for somebody to pay whatever they want, $10, $5, $25. That's what it would cost for you. It's for us to take care of you, or maybe you want to pay for somebody else. Maybe you want to think about bestowal or whatever works for you. That's and along with the courses, there's also books, and books are very important because a book is a very special. It's got a spiritual root, especially one that's printed on paper, and that's how this wisdom has survived actually over thousands of years, is because it was written, and then accompanying the written texts is the oral explanation. That is, the teachers who could open up and show what these things are and how they are relevant to us. Not just, well, there are 10 Sephirot, and this is this quality, that quality, that quality, and that quality, and it's all of this stuff. And I've read it all. It's just a bunch of nonsense. But what the oral stuff explains to us is how to find these things within ourselves, how they're relevant, and how we work with them in order to evolve. That's what we need to know, because without the instruction, which is basically a course, you can read the books for inspiration, but it'll take a long, long, long time, and maybe never, to truly understand what it's speaking about. So the books are available in our bookstore. If you're a student, you get a 20% discount, and there are packages that have got to do with each course, and these are major books. I mean, these are profound books, and they contain ancient wisdom basically explained. So there you go. Let's go to a question.
Okay, so Tony, we have a live question from Tony.
Huh? Perception of reality. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. My question is, when we're practicing Kabbalah, you get those moments of extreme insight, and then immediately after, you're almost like bombarded by this other, like the world hits you in a completely opposite direction, and then you're like shaking, and then you're constantly trying to choose what I like. You almost like have a choice now. Okay, are you going to practice Kabbalah, or are you going to just do things normally the way like the way you interpret them? How do you deal with that, especially when it gets too intense? How do you deal with that? I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Basically what you're talking about is the main thing that differentiates Kabbalah to any other spiritual path. Every other path deals only with that sort of high sense of enlightenment. That is, there's something about what we just learned, the insight that we had, that goes completely into the vessels of reception. It goes into our ego. And we go, oh, I'm filled with light. I see, I understand. That always always ends up in a crisis of faith. It always means that we end up overwhelmed by doubt, because it doesn't take into account the other developmental force, which works against the use of the will to receive. So it's a good thing when you are filled with that light, with perception, and you begin to see how things work. You're being helped from above by having that slapped out of your hand, so that you do not stay fixed on reception, but now you move to a point of free will. And what's the choice about when it comes to free will? Well, the big choice for free will is whether or not to get involved with the well-being and connection between others. But the step-by-step transformation inside of a person making, achieving that type of commitment has got to do with choosing to go above that loss and understanding that the reason that loss happened was to open up a completely new vista. Why did it drop? Why did you lose it? Why did you feel like leaving? Because a tremendous new quanta of light came into you. And it's felt, when light comes in, it doesn't feel like our ego being filled up. It's the quality of the Creator, which is to bestow to others. It's against the ego, basically. And it's calling us to rise to that level, to say, okay, not that. You're giving me an example that this should not be the be-all and end-all for me. There's something greater, there's something beyond this, and I need to identify that as being good, not the filling that I feel that fills my mind and fills my heart and tells me I'm spiritual. The ability to deal with both of those forces, that's the difference between Kabbalah and every other path. It's a good thing that the ego expands, because now that much more ego is going to become corrected when we go above what we call reason. That is, I understand it in my ego, feel it in my ego and like it there, to a point where, no, good is something that is yet to come, and it's in an opposite form that the ego doesn't understand. When we agree with that, all of a sudden we get tremendous force from above, and it lifts us to that next level. So it's a good thing that's happening to you, and you're lucky.
Yeah, very happy today with all the live questions we have. This one comes from Yulia.
Yulia, can you speak? You're unmuted.
We have another live question, so maybe we can...
Okay, while she figures it out, we'll
Yeah.
go to the next live question.
John.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I was, my question has to do with the language of branches. I was trying to find some more research on the different symbols, like Israel and what Israel really means. And I was wondering if you could give us maybe some references where we can research that further.
You from Arkansas?
I'm not aware of it. No.
Oh, it sounded like an Arkansas accent. Language of branches, there's no sort of codification of language of branches. Being able to perceive the root meaning of something has got to do with attainment. There are things that that I can tell you about, say, Israel, or maybe some other words, but they're there as a kind of a teaser for students to understand that the way we perceive things is illusory, but it's not that there's no structure. There is a structure. It's just that we don't understand what that structure is saying to us, what it means. We have a lot of sort of phantom stuff that comes from the nature of our own desire that dresses on these roots. And it changes their appearance to us. In other words, it changes their meaning to us. So the few things that we do say about language of branches is there to indicate that the world is not as it appears, and it has a completely other purpose than what we think of. Since language of branches is an attainment, that means that nobody can tell you that, and even if they do tell you that, it's going to go into your intellect. It won't change anything. It might confirm something for you. It might inspire you, but it's not going to help you evolve. It's not going to help your correction. But as you do this work and you work with the texts themselves, with other people, for instance, in the morning lessons that are given by Rav Lightman, they're daily. They happen in Israel. They happen at 3 in the morning. Where I am, it happens at 8. It's there in the evening, and they're 3 hours long. And we work with texts, and there's also we study the study of the 10 Sephirot. We study articles. We study Zohar, and particularly in Zohar, there's a whole way that it speaks that seems very strange. But when a person is working on connecting with other people and thinking only about expanding that to be a more and more real desire on their part, all of a sudden the words take on very specific meanings. About what? About how to do that. How to connect. It's actually describing in real time what's going on inside of one in the attempt to hold on to that intention. It's like a one-to-one description, and a person can understand that it's speaking about qualities within the human soul that you will have access to. Or I'll leave that at that. So Israel has to do with a desire for only one thing, a direct desire for connection with the upper force. What's the upper force? The desire to bestow to the good and the bad, to bestow good to the good and the bad. In other words, to create and fulfill everything for good. To be able to feel that in ourselves, that one has a desire to overcome whatever it takes in order to have that be the living thought within them. That's what Israel means. And it also means all of those people. It is a people. It is a fellowship. That's why they call this a desire is called a nation, because it has to be whole. It can't be part. It has to be a complete desire. And right now, we see desire as things outside of us, multiple people. That's your desire split up among all of those, what you think of as individual people. But Israel is a collection of desires all bound together to become the same desire for attaining the Creator. That is what it means. But that's outside of time and space. It's got not, it doesn't have to do with place and distance and so on, or an identity of an external people. It has to do with an inner quality that's called a nation.
Let's try Yulia again. We had her with a live question.
Yulia, can you speak? You're unmuted. Okay, Yulia, maybe type it into the chat and we'll ask it.
Then another live question from I am.
From I am?
I am,
Mhm.
yes.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Here, you go ahead.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thanks. Hey, Tony, I'm a super fan, by the way. This is our first WebEx together, so I'm pretty happy. Anyway, I have a pretty practical question, and I'll just read it. So, taking the law of cause and effect into account, what if my actions of bestowal ultimately end up turning into actions that cause pain? Like an example I've heard somewhere, and maybe it was in this course. If I win the lottery, I give my sister a car because she's a single mother and she needs to get the kids around. And then she ends up crashing that car, killing herself, and the kids are left without a mother due to my perceived selfless actions. How does one reconcile that utilizing this learning path? Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you spotlight him, please, so that I can see his face?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have video going right now.
Well, yeah. You've sort of misquoted the idea, actually. But the essence of the question is correct. What's inaccurate is that if you get this and you do that, you will get a bad outcome. The meaning of it, and maybe you do understand this, but I didn't hear that in the precision of your question. It's that external actions don't fix things, unless, like maybe they would in your family, like in your direct family, if you've got children and so on. These sorts of direct actions coming from a sense of responsibility that you have towards your children, which is made up. It's like the natural. It's like within the ego there is an intention that's similar to spirituality, and that is the feeling of a mother for a child or a father for a child. Really closer the mother than the father, because there's an absolute identification. But it's true in men too, just not to the same degree. That those actions, those actions are good actions. The idea, though, here is that if we try to fix things, one part of the idea is if you try to fix things externally and on the physical level, without the person changing their quality, it doesn't help them. It harms them in the sense that they're receiving something without earning it. That doesn't mean specifically this person who needs a car shouldn't get a car. It doesn't mean that. It means for you that if you do something, like if you're asking just to receive something, and the effort isn't there in order to go through the transformation to change your nature, your character, what you're going to end up feeling is shame, and will not have solved the problem, and you're going to go through another cycle on exactly that level until you solve that. Why? Because instead of receiving, one has to be in the giving mode. So if you win a lottery, send me a check. Give your sister the car, but keep working on your correction, because you will see that that's not really an answer, because that wasn't the problem in the first place. That's not why she's in that situation, because you're not corrected. Because she doesn't exist as a separate thing. All the people that we see outside of us are our uncorrected desires, aspects of ourselves that we wouldn't be able to perceive internally. So nature sets it up so that we see these parts of us that are under correction as though they were outside of us, and it makes very clear what our attitude is towards that. Do I care? Am I connected with it? Is it happening on the other side of the world? What the hell do I care about that? It's not my fault. I didn't do this. No. We are intimately connected with it. It's us under correction, and it's requiring greater and greater care. That's why we begin working with a small group of people and establish a real, sincere, and whole, there you can see it, a whole care, even if it's only that big. But at least it's whole. And as we expand that, it takes in the whole world. It starts to fix the things around us because our identification is with those things. Our sense of responsibility is with them. And don't worry, it's not a huge burden. It's not. It's actually our freedom. The burden is to be imprisoned inside of this idea of self alone. There's no such thing as alone. There's also no such thing as self, unless it is everybody. Love your friend as yourself. That's yourself, not that little black point. So it's a good, freeing, fulfilling thing. It's just not the one that we expect because it's not in the ego. It is an unlimited fulfillment because it's about the fulfillment of everybody. And you'll see that there, as we establish this between each other, you'll see that people will not be starving, that the political problems in the world will correct themselves, that problems with the ecosystem, all that, it will all change. Hey, aren't we going to have
Yes, exactly.
We are?
Yes.
Okay.
We are. You want to explain what are we doing, or
See if you can explain it.
if I can explain? Okay. We got lots of questions here. So now we'll have, what are we doing? 2 minutes? No?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. Let's see, Tony, how many questions you can answer in 3 minutes, starting now.
Timer. There we go.
Here. Okay. How do we practice Kabbalah in our daily meditation?
We don't meditate in Kabbalah.
What's your thought on energy blocks?
Energy blocks are selfishness.
How to deal with just a mean person?
Stay away from the mean person.
What is faith above reason in Kabbalah?
It's seeing something in the terms that the upper light wants us to see it. It's usually against our ego, and we don't see it as good. Above reason is that we agree with the mind of the upper one, and we begin to accept it and actually see it as good.
Are personality archetypes that allow them to give related to Kabbalah?
No, there's 10% of the population of all humanity are natural altruists, but they're not spiritual altruists.
Magicians can control energy, see light, and manipulate the environment. Is this not Kabbalah? Aren't they already in the upper world?
No, they cannot do that at all. That's an illusion. No, Kabbalah is about giving to everybody. It's not me having a power in any sense of the word. It is the Creator having the power to do those things, and no person can manipulate that. The Creator controls everything, whether we believe that or not.
Is individualized existing something we experience only in immaterial world?
That's what this world is for. It's here in order to help us sort out that idea of what the ego is, what that force is, what the spiritual force is of ego, and how to balance that mechanism against the force of light, and how to advance by it. We wouldn't be able to see it if we didn't come here with this identification of self.
Are the 613 mitzvot in Torah the same as or an analogy for the 1613 desires?
Yes, they are.
Why was Kabbalah hidden for years?
It was hidden because it wasn't needed. People didn't have enough coarse egoism to be able to begin to do the corrections. So even if we had spoken to them, they wouldn't have been able to understand it or see it. As a matter of fact, they didn't, and that's why religions were created. They thought that's what Kabbalah was talking about.
What is the best way to attain the Creator?
Study, connect with people, and evolve your sense of actual love for people.
What is the most important thing in the study of Kabbalah?
Connection. It's all about connection. It has nothing to do with the mind. It has to do with our willingness to connect, and to connect for the well-being of the one that you're connecting with.
Why is there evil in the world?
So that we can rise above it and see that there actually is no evil.
Okay. Wow, that was the best one you have done so far.
Did you count?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
12. 12 questions.
That was easy.
Okay. I hope the bell wasn't too loud.
Okay. Okay, let's see where we are. So we have another live question from Haydn.
You're Haydn, not Haydn,
Haydn.
right?
Haydn,
Haydn was a
Haydn.
great composer.
I'm guessing that you can hear me this time. um, I've already said or asked in chat, but how can one become a teacher in Kabu? Like, I bet there are other people who are interested, or even a staff, be a part of Kabu.
As far as staff goes, as people move along, they move into the graduate environment, and in that environment, people can, if they choose, get involved in as staff. It's important. They say that Joshua, the one who replaced Moses, gained his spiritual degree by setting up the benches. All he did was make sure that the people who came to study could. So there's actually more in aiding other people to attain spirituality than in attaining, trying to attain it oneself. And nonetheless, he achieved the highest state of all of Moses' students. So it's good that people get involved in that, and you can. And also, as you progress, there's also opportunities to take a course in instructing and in disseminating as well. But that's down the line, It's because a person needs a lot of experience. You have to be able to look at stuff from a few perspectives in order to hear what a person's saying and so on. When they're asking a question, and you get that the more that the more semesters that you go through, the more capable, obviously, you become of instructing.
So we have a question from Judy. I had been very unhappy for several years, and I had imagined every day about my desires with love and gratitude in my heart, even though I was unhappy. Months later, I got exactly what I had desired to the detail. Is that coincidence, or have I used my sixth sense?
Read it one more time.
I had been very unhappy for several years, and I had imagined every day about my desires with love and gratitude in my heart, even though I was very unhappy. Months later, I got exactly what I had desired to the detail. Is that coincidence, or have I used my sixth sense?
Okay, well, I'm happy that you got what you were looking for. But it's not the ultimate of what you're looking for. There is no coincidence. Everything is designed to evolve us towards the correct desire. And it does that by creating desires in us and either fulfilling those desires or not fulfilling them. Because if you don't receive something, it grows. The desire grows. Or you say, no, I want something else. And sometimes when we get the thing fulfilled, we say, well, that didn't do it. The sixth sense is the ability to feel what the upper force is asking of us for our next degree of evolution, spiritual evolution. That is, it allows us to feel the light interacting with us, this force of love that is the connective force. That's the sixth sense, and it only happens when we have a resistance to accepting what it wants to give us into our will to receive. When we resist taking it in to those vessels, that the small vessels that we say, oh, fulfill this for me. Fulfill me with this type of love, or this thing, or this accomplishment, or whatever. There's nothing wrong with those. But the spiritual sixth sense happens when we have a screen that resists the spiritual light going into the will to receive. Then we are constantly feeling the reality that there is light working with us. It's called working against us, so to speak. Not to destroy us. It's just that if you don't have you have to have something to compare with. You have to know that there's a difference between the will to receive and the will to bestow. That difference is a decision, and that decision is called a screen. The decision is, I will not take this to the degree that I can. I won't take it into the will to receive. And all of a sudden, this thing is vibrating constantly, because the upper force is always trying to bring us above our reason to its reason. That's the sixth sense. But what you're in touch with is that desire is the motivating force behind our evolution. It's what we do with the desire that determines where we evolve to, or whether or not we evolve.
Tony, you mentioned the retreat earlier. So student asking if it's suitable for new students. Where is it? If you can give some
good
information about it.
Like I said, I'm really excited about this. This retreat is something new. It's something new that we're doing in order to give students an opportunity to work together with other students. Like it's not a convention. We have, maybe you've heard about the Kabbalistic conventions. They're usually like big scale stuff. This is more like a summer camp, boot camp, spiritual boot camp, in which a student will be with other people physically. You know, it's like a camp. If you've been to camp, you know that that's like the most fun in the world. And you're in a cabin with other people, and you're working together. You're immersed. What we're going to do there is we're going to create a model of actually living in spirituality, working with and for other people. We will be learning in very practical ways, practical Kabbalah, about how to establish these types of caring bonds, how to experience the force that we call the Creator between people. And this is going to be 3 days of immersion into something that so practical that you can begin to see how this work actually can correct the world. It's like today, you know, what happens to us normally is, like some of the friends have said here, you have an insight, or you're in the class, and then you go out into the world, and boom, the wave of materialism and self-concern obviously buries us, because that's the strongest force. You need to taste what it's like to be in an environment where the highest value is connection to others, to love your friend as yourself. And that's what this is going to be. 3 days of every possible way of looking at this, of responsibilities that will put you in touch with the sixth sense, so to speak, that will allow you to make connections with people, deep connections. You'll understand who you're working with, and most of all, most importantly, you will feel exactly what practical Kabbalah is, what the outcome, where it's all aimed. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a beautiful thing, and I'm so happy that we're going to be able to do this kind of thing. And it's going to be in October. And please, if you can just stick the link to the site about where it's going to be. It's in the Poconos.
It's October 5th to 7th.
October 5th to 7th at a beautiful camp in the Poconos, while it's still nice weather. It's beautiful grounds, lots of great facilities there. And so the link will tell you all about it.
It's also there's the early bird discount. So if you register now, it will be cheaper to attend. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I would go to me, if I was in your situation, I would go to this. I would say it's more important to go to this than to go to a convention, because this is specifically, it's really a boot camp. I mean, not that it's harsh and you're going to have to climb walls and shoot guns or anything, but that it really is practical exercise in practical Kabbalah.
Okay, next question. So, if you do not meditate, do you have any quiet time with spirit?
If Kabbalists don't meditate, is there a quiet time with spirit? Well, Kabbalists don't meditate in the same sense that Buddhists meditate or Vedantists meditate, you know. Kabbalistic meditation, and it's not meditation, is an active engagement with the thought of creation, basically, with constant. You cannot stop thought because you don't own it. It's the engagement with so to speak, the thought behind all of life. And it is not that it happens for a Kabbalist when they detach from things. It happens through complete engagement, because spiritual fulfillment is actually 100% engagement. It means that we are one and the same as the general law of nature, like the force of nature, and what we do becomes the same thing. When does nature take a nap, or you know, when does nature go to the top of the hill? It is the hill. It is the wind. It is thought. So Kabbalistic meditation is complete engagement. That doesn't mean that a person doesn't take time to let something settle in them. They do. But nature arranges that for us, because our day is not made up of 100% study, practical work. We're responsible for maintaining, keeping our health, taking care of our families, the people that we love. We need to support ourselves. We have to have bread. If there's no bread, there's no Torah. I say you can't learn if you don't, because that is part of the structure. It's not an either-or thing. It has to be all. So in the process of doing those things, a person contemplates, measures, and tests those things that they've discovered. And if it's a personal need, because your character is is a certain shape, you're a certain type of personality, take the time. There's nothing wrong with meditating. It's just that don't replace the act of spiritual work with meditation. They're not the same thing. And you'll sort this out as you go along, because you'll see that the things that were very appropriate for you as you were sort of traveling along and finding the path of actual spiritual fulfillment were absolutely necessary at the time. Even great awakenings that you may have had, tremendous insights that stay with you even now, were important in their time and at that moment. They were necessary. But once a person reaches that place where the conscious engagement with the upper force begins, those things are not important. And they're not even necessary to take the next steps. But I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm telling you first of all what happened for me, and for just about everybody that I know, because most of the people who come to Kabbalah are seekers, and they've seriously investigated a lot of things. And you see what's useful and what's not useful. One piece of advice is that if you want to climb the ladder, you have to put the ladder down in one place before you can climb. You can't carry it around. And if we mix things, especially at the beginning, and it's the hardest thing to decide not to do this, you know what I mean, to set these things aside, but you will confuse yourself very deeply if you mix these things at the beginning, because a small deviation at the beginning of the path, at the end of the path, is a huge deviation. So you might as a bit of advice, try not mixing stuff. Try it. Just stick with what you're getting here and see if that works for you. If it doesn't, no harm done. Okay.
Another live question from Ricardo.
Hello again. I'm asking something that is directly related to the last question. I am in the third course, Kabbalah in Action, and finding information in internet. I have found a course called Introduction to Kabbalah by Professor Boaz Huss, that is about the history of Kabbalah. It's not about Kabbalah, it's about history and evolution from the point of view of scholars, students interested in history. Do you think this course is good for us in this moment?
Well, I'll tell you that I also spent time, a lot of time, in an earlier part of my life, learning about the history of Kabbalah, and by scholars, university profs and historians. But there's a big fault there, and that is that what I discovered once it became opened to me by being in contact with a real Kabbalist is that there's those things are not accurate, because there's no understanding of what Kabbalah actually is. There are many assumptions, and they're shared assumptions across that academic discipline that are wrong. So if you want to, I would suggest that you learn more about the inside of Kabbalah first, and then go look at the history, because you'll understand what you really would like to get out of the history, because you'll know what's correct and what's not correct in what they're saying. And you'll know why it's correct and why it's not correct. They have, they are the keepers of a certain linear progression, but their definitions of things are almost entirely inaccurate. And that's because they themselves aren't engaged in it. And Kabbalah is a science in which the scientist begins to understand the laws by changing himself. There can't be this sort of objective engagement with Kabbalah. It has to be completely subjective. It doesn't mean that we lose our objectivity, but the science is about the transformation of the scientist. So this, I don't think it's a good thing. I think it will confuse you, as I said, unless you know first what's really in Kabbalah. And why do you need it? If you're asking, maybe you have doubts about the veracity of what we're saying. Okay, then that's fair. Like if you don't fully believe it and you have doubts, then go, by all means check it out. But it's not a necessary thing at all, because Kabbalah takes us to a place beyond time and space, and that's a linear progression in terms of history, and that's not what Kabbalah is.
Mario, KBU a student asks, why is there evil in the world? Why do I feel pain? Why do I feel pain?
You feel pain because our nature is completely opposed to the to the quality of bestowal. And it is trying to evolve us, the quality of bestowal is trying to evolve us to be like it. Any time that light touches us in order to evolve us, we feel it, for the most part, as pain. It's like something we don't want, because of our absolute identification with our own limited self, the ego. We feel ourselves to be in danger, and that goes across the board from feeling that we're ill, thinking that there's a physical threat to us, or that nature is, that there's a natural disaster, or that we have an emotional pain. All of that is just the intensity of light saying grow. If we don't have a method to know how to grow, then all we're left with is the pain. But the purpose of the pain is to help us evolve and to leave that place that we're in and evolve to another higher place. For thousands of years, humanity has lacked the understanding of the laws of nature and how they work, and has been unable to work with pain for its true purpose. All we're left with is being bashed. So we get this slow evolution that we call history of us getting pushed from behind, bang, 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 bang. We evolve very slowly and mostly only materially. So what we got out of it was like high technology and stupidity in terms of human relations. It's very clear that that's where we are now. So pain is purposeful if you understand its purpose, and we know what to do with it. By the way, about the retreat, the other thing that's going to be great about the retreat, practically, is that all of the instructors and the staff and people who through Kabu, we're all going to be there. We're all going to do this experience together. So it's going to be fun.
Maisa Kakishnabers is asking, I need your recommendation about the best book to buy to explain the Torah, spirituality, and decoding it according to Kabbalah.
You can't decode the Torah. You have to decode yourself. You have to decode the forces that are working in you. Torah is instruction by the light. Learning Kabbalah practically, correcting oneself, is the decoding of what the Torah is teaching us. It's trying to teach us what Kabbalah is teaching us. It's what the oral teaching of Kabbalah is all about. The fact that there are crystalline mathematical forms or word forms that you can find in letter arrays in the Torah that's not a thing. You can find that in any book, and it has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that everything that's created is created perfect and for a purpose. But it has nothing to tell us. Only that desire that you feel that wants to be corrected, coming to a place where you engage, you decide consciously to begin your transformation, that will give you the insight into all those things. And Torah is not a book. Torah is an active engagement with the upper light that has many forms, and the living form is inside of our heart in relation to other people. The written form that we call the 5 books of Moses are there so that over the 2,000 years when Kabbalah was concealed, those upper forces and the way that they interact with each other would not be forgotten. So if you want to decode it, you have to live it. And I'm glad that you want to decode it.
Live question from John.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My question, actually, I got 2 questions. When I first started down this spiritual path, I started having synchronicities. And now I'm getting like 10 synchronicities a day. And I was wondering where that falls into Kabbalah. Also, in the language of branches, what is the spiritual significance of the menorah?
Yeah, well, of course, when we open ourselves up with the desire to work with the light, we begin to feel the perfection and the holistic nature of life. That everything is completely related to everything else with a direction. In other words, with purpose. That's what synchronicity is. It's the sensation that everything is connected for a purpose. But what we're getting in synchronicity is just a slice. We only see that holistic nature in a very small viewing slice, and we go, wow, there's something more to this than what I thought. When we open that up through our connection with other people, we begin to see that everything's synchronized on every level, all the time, towards a goal, because there was a thought that at the beginning of creation that is being fulfilled. You are what's being fulfilled, and the fulfillment is experienced by immersion into the holistic reality. So that's why the ego, when the ego touches holistic reality, it gets what it calls synchronicity. When the awakened, connected soul gets it, it experiences spiritual reality. The menorah is the menorah represents the worlds, the seven sephirot that are kind of between the upper world and the absolute lowest world, and it represents sephirot in which we transform to become like Keter, like the place from which all light comes.
We have a few minutes left, and we have enough questions for another blitz.
Blitz me.
Blitz you. Okay. Let's go. Can we ignite a spiritual longing by pondering the non-relating nature of irrational numbers?
No.
Can one gain spiritual attainment in occupations that are seemingly egoistic, such as performance or art?
Say that again?
Can one gain spiritual attainment in occupations that are seemingly egoistical?
No, you can gain spiritual momentum. You can get a desire towards spirituality because art shows you that there is perfection, and you taste the fact that you're not actually creating anything, but there is a creative force, but it's not attainment.
So what is the outer is the mirror, and we must simply go through the looking glass?
Yeah, we've got to go through the looking glass and become both sides of the mirror.
How do you know what is giving in difficult life situations?
Connection is giving. You can't figure that out with your head.
According to the Kabbalah, is there a female aspect to the Creator?
Yes, we are the female aspect of the Creator. The whole creation is female. In other words, the will to receive is called feminine. The will to bestow is called masculine. That's not men and women. That's just two forces, plus and minus. And what is between them, that's where our life is.
You said get away from evil people. How does this relate to love your neighbor as yourself?
No, I was joking. That was a stupid joke. But the thing is, you can't really overcome those kinds of things directly. Work with the group towards spirituality, and that type of thing will resolve.
If we are created to receive, then why do we need to change to want to bestow?
Because we're suffering. And because our life is not what it could be. We recognize that we're not fulfilled. That's why we have all these unfulfilled desires. That's why the bad things that seem to happen to us in life happen.
Can you briefly explain what is a screen?
I did explain that, so I'm going to take that one.
What happened after we die?
There's no line between life and life. The Kabbalists say one returns immediately to continue working on their next degree.
Is there a God?
No, there isn't a God. Everything that exists is one and the same thing, and you can call it whatever you want.
Why do students experience anger while studying Kabbalah?
Because they're actually progressing, and they're dealing with the reaction of their ego, so they're feeling their own resistance to the light.
Why do we fear death?
Because we don't know what it is. We don't know where we're going. But Kabbalah tells you where you're going.
Why have we been created with ego if our job is to fight it?
so that we can attain it for ourselves.
That was easy.
Okay. 12 questions again.
Woo!
Yes. That's great.
You got to learn to read faster.
Okay. Yeah, it's me. Okay, I think we're close to the end, right?
Yeah, we are. So
Yeah.
I had another clip, but I'm not going to play that clip. I want to thank you all very much for being here. Fantastic questions from everybody, including, YouTube and Facebook. Great questions. We touched a lot of things. Now, if you're interested in, you're already learning. Okay, you're in a course. Keep going. There are more courses, and you'll find out about them as you go. If you're not, check out the link and see if this is for you. See if you're interested in doing it. If you're already a student and what I said about the retreat sounds exciting to you, come, because we'll have a lot of fun together. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Dina. I want to thank Alosha. I want to thank all our friends who are working in the background here, running the Zoom, taking care of you, making sure that we can communicate with each other, and setting up this event and caring that this thing happens in a way that you get what you need. Thank you, friends, very much. And Dina's got some announcements for you.
Announcements, yes, just to conclude. So, retreat, again, is October 5th to 7th. Join us for the unforgettable Kabbalistic experience. 3 days of total immersion. Pay what you wish participation. If you want to participate in the course tuition or simply support the spreading of the wisdom of Kabbalah, you can do so on our Pay What You Wish page. Again, links will be provided in the chat. Next semester starts September 30th. If you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, and you want to sign up to the course, you can do that. Links in the chat. This is it for today. Thank you very much, friends.
I want to add one little thing. That question about studying the history of Kabbalah. If you're in university and that's like a course that you can take there and it's an option for you, go ahead. My answer was about whether or not that's something that a Kabbalah student should do if they're not studying in a university. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. See you next time.
There should be music.
When we can stand together above a frozen heart, I believe the light will come and we won't stay apart. Seems like I lost my wings, but you made me fly. And if I stop breathing, with you I'll stay alive. 'Cause when we can stand together above a frozen heart, I'm sure the light will come and make things right. We are the parts of the one man body. We are the soldiers of the light. We're gonna break these walls together. Let the love free our minds. We're gonna burn like fire, fire in the one desire. Love is stronger than the dark side of life. Fire, fire with the one desire. 'Cause in the end there's nothing else besides light. Light, love, love, light, light. In the end there's nothing else besides light. Light, love, love, light, light. In the end there's nothing else.